Hey, how's everybody doing? Glad you could come back and spend some time with us today. Um, I'm just looking at a little note here. I use this little notebook for some prompts, and just an interesting observation by Dr. Anderson about slavery and blacks. A gentleman named Ulrich B. Phillips was a white historian, and he advocated slavery. He said blacks were happy and blacks were civilized by slavery. White folks were doing black folks a favor by forcing them to work without pay and taking their women and tearing up families and stuff. Blacks are better off from that experience. Um, and it's colonial. He's advocating colonialization. Colonizing people to um, for people to be, how can you say, conform to the will of the power group, right? Um, is what he's talking about. And but still, in what we went through Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and he and she we come across those kind of similar conversations a few times in her book. I'm Tomlin's Back. This is 365 days towards racial change, and we are and I'm doing our countdown here, day 359. Wow, if you can still stand to hear me talking, then I'll give you a shout out. It's going to be over 180 hours worth of monologue here. Quite the feat for me to complete something like this. So I'm glad you're with us today, no matter who you are, right? This is not, we're not advocating hate. We're just talking truth to power, to the system that's been created here in the land, benefits some, the minority. Well, let me not put it like that. It benefits the majority, but the majority is of a specific group. It's an extreme disadvantage to the minority, but it's the majority of the minority um, that struggles and works real hard to try to have some semblance of being happy and civilized in Mr. Phillips' system here. We make it through, but fortunately, black people are creative, resilient. We expend a lot to have survived what goes on in America. So we're looking at black issues, and we've talked about slavery, politics, history, research, medical stuff. It's a whole cross section, socioeconomic conditions, everything like that. No, there's no aspect of America where racism is not an appropriate conversation or consideration. You can talk religion, all anything you want, and somewhere around there is racism uh, oozing and hiding its ducking its head and pretending it's not there and all that. Fortunately, I have a lot of white friends, people I love, and um, so it's not a definite identity. We don't know who is putting their energy into perpetuating America's disease just by looking at skin color. That was a mistake that 1600s America did. They looked at the power group, looked at the skin color, made a determination, a judgment, and consigned everybody with a skin color to a certain standard of living, way of living. And that's just, it's a crime. It's not just wrong. We went through that just a couple days ago, right? America got away with a crime with this slavery deal, and they continue to benefit. It's a crime that keeps perpetuating itself. It's a living crime that we manage, live with, and deal with. But it's not morally wrong. It's not issue with values, all this after the fact stuff. It's a crime, and that's how I'm going to be defining America's slavery, America's racism from here on out. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claud Anderson. We reference his work a lot today. We are in a Black History Reader, page 148, looking at the Marshall Plan and some conversations around that today. Also, we'll get into Black labor, white wealth, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower, I'm sorry, this is Search for Power and Economic Justice in America. And we'll look at Powernomics, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. You can find Dr. Anderson here on YouTube and at Powernomics.com. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You'll find Black women supporting each other, having community, sharing resources. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook experience. Got a business mind, Dr. Boyce Watkins at the Black Business School. Be glad to help you out. He's got some resources and products over there. Another great business person I know is Tyrone Gregory, the self-employed tax guy. You find him on Twitter and also LinkedIn. We have a lot of fun here. We have what I like to call story time. We're finished with this book, but I want to keep this. This is good reading. You can read this to your children. I think this is good, appropriate for children. Uncle Tom's Cabin. If you can't find your flavor, if you feel like you're not being heard or whatever, and you've searched for social media or something like that, do what I did. Start your own little thing and see what happens. This is 359 episodes later of monologue. Uh, it's healing. I hope it's not made me neurotic or anything, but that's a lot of stuff to me talking at my computer here. But maybe if anybody's ever interested in my life, can write about some unique circumstances that happened for me in the 2018 to 2020 time frame where nice window of opportunity, and I just put my foot in it and exploited the whole damn thing as hard as I could. All right, in our countdown, day 359, page 148, a Black History Reader, talking about a kind of Marshall Plan. Marshall Plans, he's associating the topic today with the Marshall Plan. Marshall Plans, any kind of bailout, restructuring, reconstruction of um, communities at risk. He references the Jewish experience a lot. money put aside. Rebuilding Germany, um, Japan, Marshall Plans, any nation or area where we kind of subdued them a little bit, and where the United States now is going to help restructure them. They help get them back on their feet. I was watching some Mike Tyson knockouts. You could see compilations of best of sports, anything here on YouTube. And so I was watching some Mike Tyson knockouts, right? And early on in his career, you didn't see he got mean later on, but and you see this with boxers, fighters. Early on in his career, he would knock a guy out and then help him up, you know, try to comfort him after he done beat him up. Later in his career, he's, you know, just got the killer instinct. Was in his prime and stuff. So none of that helping you out because words, people are saying words, and that's at a championship level. It's a whole different thing. You got to be a killer in there. But that's the United States, right? We go historically, beat you up a little bit, just subdue you enough. And this is historical. It's Native Americans, Black Americans. Oh, maybe Mexico, Spain to some degree, right? Beat you down to where you can be handled, controlled, and manipulated. And now comes some bailouts and some measures to get you on your feet. Not only that, altruistic um, endeavors as well. Like I said, we reflect on the Jews here and their experience, a lot of parallels in there, but the United States has historically maintained a good relationship with the Jewish nation, supports them. We back their play, they back us. They're surrounded there in the Middle East, so it's important to them to keep America as an ally. It's important to us because we need to have as friendly allies in that region as we can because of oil and stuff like that. So a lot of win-win. So it's a relationship that we don't even let the president mess with that relationship. We need that's part of our national security to be friends with them. So we're going to get into that here, this Marshall Plan topic today. The question is, Dr. Anderson writes, he says, does Black America need a World War II type Marshall Plan? Bailouts, restructuring, um, construction, and stuff like that for some of these beat up nations and at risk populations. And I mean, you can probably already see where we're going with this. The United States has a lot of, has a history of reaching out. I mean, when I was growing up, you don't see it much anymore. You don't hear about it. We've really slowed down. I think it's part of technology and stuff like that. We use drones to do our work now. We don't have to have so many troops, boots on the ground deployed in places anymore. But if you think about like Somalia and places where we used to be, we don't do that anymore. We think about our adversaries and think about the leadership out there. We locate the leadership, drone strike, boom, surgical dealing because the technology is that um, is that good. Now, my apartment has this large bay window, right, and someone can and it's facing west, right, and somebody could shoot a missile off from Washington D.C., have it loop around, do a U-turn and fly right in my window. That's how good the technology is. So we don't. Um, I don't see the United States engaged with a lot of food resources and stuff like that were common. We used to be. We used to someone on the planet just had to cry help. A nation had to be in trouble, and the United States would come running, and we'd be at the head of the United Nations forces and things like that. Not so much anymore. Coming through our World War One, World War Two years, we are very good for being wise to go places, right? Now, part of this also with reconstructing and helping out these places is a conversation I'm not I'm not an expert at, but I know part of it has to do with something called central banking, world banking, Federal Reserve, the connection with um, banking system, monetary systems in these places and their relationship. And, you know, you get a place like you look at our recent, an easy illustration is you look at the recent conflict with Iraq and stuff like that. Well, you go there and you're going to find some element of a central bank, some monetary system that's working for both groups, and that's another big important part of participating, being friendly with America, a nation that is not harmonizing or working well with America, Iran, North Korea, places like that. Well, those places don't have a central bank. Their monetary systems are structured very differently, and they don't participate or work well with the United States. Our whole relations would be different if our monetary systems were more in sync. But like I said, I'm not an expert on that. I just know it's an element of what happens after America or the Allies handle a space. Then we're going to rush in with um, handling, controlling the monetary system going on there. He cites this, because you look at history and you see America. Oh, we run over to Somalia. We went to Eastern Europe. We go places. It was sad, like during the whole Iraq years, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and all that. And you look at Freedom Spring and some of the things that kicked off to topple um, things in Libya and Egypt, right? When Western African nations felt, this opportunity to participate and come out from under their oppressive regimes. Well, they didn't get the help. America didn't run over there and help them. But you see, America does these kind of things where there's some viable interest. America's extending a hand, helping out, and things like that. During, the Iraq War, the Kurds saw an opportunity. The Iraqi government was weakened, so the Kurds try to move in, and America, we did flyovers and gave a lot of lip service, but didn't help the Kurds do a coup de grace on the whole system. Same thing in Syria. right? There wasn't enough, and Syria was backed by had some backup, so we couldn't go in there and just sweep across. But we kind of helped out as we could during Syria's civil war. I say all that to say that this is an appropriate question because Black Americans we are survivors of a Holocaust. Um, we've had to be extremely creative. We've suffered a lot of loss. We are in an economically depressed condition as a result of being kidnapped, coerced, or whatever you want to call it. We've got our issues to navigate. Well, um, Dr. Anderson is saying, you're giving this money over here and you go Russian with military over there. We participate in that. And, but, our communities need some infrastructure help. We need some policies to protect us. We could use some financial support. We need to, uh, come into the community so that so we can be a community. With these bailouts and these plans, initiatives, and outpouring of resources are very much appropriate for Black interests inside America, for Black Americans, right? We've got proof upon proof of instances where Black folks have been run over, coerced, challenged, and made fun of, and had we were stolen from, incarcerated, all these things. Some of the reason dysfunction perpetuates and still exists in various aspects towards Black people in America is because it has socioeconomic roots behind it. A big, startling statistic that gets we were prompted to. It's run its news cycle essentially on CNN, but we went through 2 3 weeks where the you know uh, Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by the virus, and you see them that they try to steer the conversation towards some physical justification that Black people are physically susceptible to this illness, right? And that's just not the truth. Where we are generally in a socioeconomic condition it leaves us compromised and vulnerable to diseases, right? The person living in rural America, country air, space, um, where stress isn't as common, right? When I live downtown in the inner city, I hear sirens all day long. It's something's going on. But in rural America, it's quiet. I used to love visiting my grandmom's um, in you know in rural America. That was nice because it was quiet. Cars passed her. Um, there was no rush hour traffic ever. Just quiet. Hear bugs. You could hear the corn grow. That's all right, right? But if you're jammed up shoulder to shoulder in the inner city, um, uh, where your apartment is where you might sleep, the rest of the time you got to scramble and hustle trying to make $1 to pay just to live. Well, that's going to be a little stressful, right? And Black people are going to be subject and vulnerable to that, right? So Dr. Anderson is saying, with this question that, let's take a look at the socioeconomic conditions um, that have Black people vulnerable to viruses and things like that, and let's inject some resources into the community to turn some of this around, right? When schools closed, right, I didn't see any news cycle where white kids uh, in school struggled with hunger, right? It was total. All these black children suddenly are have to scramble and be creative because the school breakfast and lunch programs has disappeared, right? They're counting on that to get them started. I can't believe how blind I was. I grew up in kind of a rural town, and but I bet you there were kids hungry there, right? I didn't appreciate that my mom would cook oatmeal consistently, or we had cold cereal and stuff. That I come to class prepared, not struggling with hunger, right? And it's sad that people of my generation's kids I probably knew that I didn't notice were not eating lunch or maybe didn't have breakfast. Well, not only were people, black people more susceptible and vulnerable to the coronavirus socioeconomically, well, now you've collapsed one of the mechanisms that dealt with hunger and resources for the black child. Very sad, right? And it's not a difference in any physical attributes. Everybody knows how to eat, digest food, right? It's not a health problem that kids are being excluded. It's a problem with resources the parents don't have or something like that. That's a lot to consider and think about. A Marshall Plan or a bailout or gift or whatever is going to help turn some of that around when the community, um, when the community stress elevates exponentially, right? That's an economic issue, right? You can handle anything if you got enough resources to handle it. But if you're struggling under stress, yeah, you're going to be more susceptible and vulnerable to hunger and disease. And that's the something that black people really should get a hold of, right? Because this this virus is just a birth pang, you know, greater things to come. Because if we get total collapse, total fallout, we got to think about those elements, aspects of the community that are going to be first under the bus, first expendable. you know, if you go down, your ship sinks, you're out in the middle of the ocean, and you're on a flotation device. Well, you got to think if you got that device, you're going to be kicking people off. People are going to be grabbing at you, trying to share that or kick you off, right? If we get total collapse, that's irreparable. That stimulus packages don't help. Then you got to be careful if you've historically been at the bottom rung of the ladder. Back in 2012, Dr. Anderson, along with the Harvest Institute, that's another place you could find Dr. Anderson, sent a letter to President Obama to outline some solutions to propose a Marshall Plan. and I read it. It's a lot of socioeconomic conditions and um, access to opening some businesses, helping Black people get started economically, which is a big pillar for Dr. Anderson's message, right? And he says it went unignored, of course, which is no surprise. But it's sad because uh, every administration extends some package to some aspect of America, right? Blacks, we get the right to vote, and you declare some things hate crimes, all these stuff you can write down, and they look nice when you put them up on the wall. But we don't get any specific resources directed at us, like a Native American group, like a Jewish group, and it's really unfair. And I think Dr. Anderson, he's so right on this point. Um, about that. I think about my personal life, once I took my responsibility, got my head together, and then I was like, I can use some resources to fix some of the uh, lingering aspects of racism. So that I may get a business started, self-determine my life, make some moves, feel privilege in America. Some interesting things to think about. I encourage you to get the book, A Black History Reader, and look at those questions. It blew my mind some of the things America is about that I didn't understand. Excuse me. Thanks for hanging out. We're on a countdown, 365 days towards racial change. That's day 359 out of the way. You come back and see us again. We're going to get that 365, I'm sure of it. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.